Hi everyone, I'm Michael Moyes, and welcome to our open house. I'm a student advisor here at Berklee Music, the online division of the Berklee College of Music, and this is the third open house this term. We've been doing these for several terms now, and we'll be continuing to do that. So we're going to have about 15 minutes of conversation with myself and our mystery guest, who you'll learn about in a second. And then we'll have 15 minutes or so of question and answers. We usually do a little bit less than that, but I think you guys are going to have a lot of questions for him today. So keep the questions coming throughout the presentation so that we can get as many as we can at the end. My guest is someone that you probably know. Maybe you've taken classes with him before, Mike King. He was the marketing and product manager at Rykodisc, where he oversaw marketing efforts for a huge number of label artists, including Mickey Hart, Morphine, Jess Klein, Voices on the Verge, Bill Hicks, one of my favorites, The Slip, who's a local Boston group from a while ago, and Frank Zappa's Estate, and many more. Mike was also formerly director of marketing and managing editor at artisthousemusic.org. Now, for Berklee, Mike has been an instructor for quite a while and an author who is highly regarded by both students and his peers. Just this last year, I think, he was recognized as the best music business teacher by the National Association of Record Industry Professionals, NARM, which was a really big deal. He's written 3 online courses with us with extremely long titles.
That's true.
Online music marketing with Topspin, music marketing, press promotion, distribution, and retail, and online music marketing, campaign strategies, social media, and digital distribution.
SEO friendly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Very SEO friendly. He also teaches the future of music in the music business class with us online for Berklee Music. And his book with the same title of the second class, Music Marketing, Press Promotion, Distribution, and Retail, published by Berklee Press in 2009. So let's get started with a couple questions.
The Slip are still around, by the way. They're now the Bar Brothers, and they were just on Letterman maybe 3 weeks ago.
No way, really?
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an artist as well. I do all kinds of different music, and I'm sure plenty of you are artists as well. So we write a lot of songs, and one question that we often get as advisors, and I'm sure you get them in your classes, is what's the best way to get my music out there? Should I post it on Facebook, SoundCloud? What's the best place to put my music?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this kind of abstractly maybe. There was a really smart guy named James Lamberti who put it to me like this a couple of years ago. So I worked at a label, and back in the day, the idea is that there were tens of outlets affecting millions of people. So back in the day, you'd be, a label would be working with commercial radio, a label would be working with MTV, or a label would be working with major press outlets, like defined kind of larger things that had a group of people that are associated with them, right? So the quote is, back in the day, or the quote rather is, we've gone from an era where there are tens of outlets affecting millions of people to an era where there are millions of outlets affecting tens of people. I really like that idea, and it's from James Lamberti. I don't know if he made it up or he got it from somewhere else. So for me, how to get your music out there, it's to start, it's about niche marketing. It's about finding very particular outlets that work for you, right? Because you think about it, there's millions and millions of bands that are trying to get out there, So how do you break through? And it's about finding these pockets of people that really align with your values, align with your music, People that do this really well. Ani DeFranco does it really well, She kind of parachutes into a group of people that already exist. And Seth Godin talks about this, in his book called Tribes. Dave Matthews does it really well. There's a lot of bands that do that really well, where they've identified pockets of people and they've kind of dropped in there. So from a very big scale idea, and this isn't to say that the way that labels operate is not of value. If you're a commercial, if you're signed to a label and your hope is to become an international pop superstar, right? Label's the way to do that. But for the vast majority of artists, I think a better approach is to really target certain niches, certain areas, and try to affect people, try to find these pockets of people and get them very specifically interested in your music. And that's a whole long answer. How do you get these people interested? I mean, one example is, so say you are an artist and you've identified a band that might be at a little bit of a higher level than you. You can use Google Blog Search. Check out that band, right? So say, you know, the Bar Brothers or the Slip. Who's talking about the Slip? Google Blog Search. Look at all of these different outlets, right? Through Google Blog Search, and then kind of do some research. What other things are these outlets talking about? What other bands? You know, can you pull out some traits that these people share and put that into your marketing plan? You know, so there's that level of it. And then you talked about, you know, should you use SoundCloud? Should you use Facebook? Like that sort of thing. For me, the answer is yes to that. But I think almost. I'm not going to say almost. I think more importantly is getting your own site together. Right. You know, so you want a dedicated place that you can completely control. And the marketing idea behind it is there's a conversion funnel. So if you're out here working with these niche outlets, you know, talking about your music or getting them to, you know, getting these people to talk about your music, you're trying to drive them somewhere to convert them, to get a better relationship happening. You know, it's about permission marketing. It's about finding a group of people and then communicating with them in more of a one-on-one basis. And this just wasn't possible 10 years ago. You know, direct-to-fan existed a long time ago. You look at the book, This Band Could Be Your Life, and you look at Black Flag, you know, those guys were connecting with fans, like from the stage. I mean, they were, you know, there was that. But the tools that exist right now online are really robust. There's more happening all the time that you can really use to, you know, market in a very specific way, you know, as opposed to the labels where they have kind of a shotgun marketing approach, what's called like a push marketing approach. You can have more of a pull approach, a very specific relationship with somebody. So the key is finding those people, getting your website together, converting those people. One way, and when I say converting, it's trying to get a permission-based contact from people.
So like an email address?
Like an email address, right. Yeah. Permission-based contact. Again, this comes from Seth Godin's book, Permission Marketing, from 1999. So this stuff isn't all that new, but the tools have kind of popped up recently that are really helpful. So if you have your site together, you know, how do you best articulate what you're doing first? You know, streaming your music, a video, or whatever, right on the homepage, as few quick clicks as possible. And then how do you get an email address? How do you get some point of permission-based contact? So there's different tools you can use to grab those, an email address, or to get somebody's, you know, somebody to retweet you, like that sort of. There's different tools you can use, tweet for a track, and like that sort of thing, and different companies that create these things. But I think it does come down to amassing a bunch of people that you can then communicate with, that they've given you permission to communicate with them, as opposed to working with a third party where the goal is that this third party will talk about you. You know what I mean? I think for me, that's a better approach, trying to reach people directly.
Yeah, we know someone who's been doing this pretty successfully, our friend Liam McCormick with Yellowbird, who's done some really cool permission-based marketing stuff. I don't know if you've seen the latest one called Photographed, where he's accepting photographs from people and offering to write songs for them.
Yeah, that's great. Just, I mean, that's a perfect way. There's so kind of the little verticals that I look at when I'm doing marketing. What I kind of judge, how I judge my success is, how am I doing with awareness? How am I doing with engagement? How am I doing with acquisition, getting these permission-based contacts? And then finally, how am I doing with monetization, right? So what you're describing with Liam is it's a really good way to engage with your fans, you know? And there's tons of, like, you know, I know a lot of people that, and this is really good for Facebook, we talk about Facebook later, but, you know, they take a photo from the stage, you know, and they post that photo on Facebook, and they're like, hey, if you're in this photo, tag yourself. And that kind of starts this thing happening, you know? Engagement, you know. So I think Liam's doing a really good job with engagement with that campaign. I think it's really smart.
You brought up monetizing a little bit. Most of what we've talked about so far is, you know, developing that relationship. But a lot of how we get that relationship is giving things away for free.
Yeah.
Is it reasonable to think that, you know, if I give my music away for free, that I am gonna get some kind of a financial return someday?
Yeah. So I mean, that's a big question. So when you say give away something for free, I think the best way to do it is when it's like an equal exchange. I don't consider giving a track away in exchange for an email address, just giving away something for free. You're exchanging, you know, there's something happening there. For me, that's the best way to do it, you know, get something in exchange for your media or for your track. And I think broadly speaking, there's a band that did this really, really well. And the manager of that band is going to be speaking at Berklee in a couple weeks, Matt Druin, right? So he ran, he manages Metric, he ran their campaign called Fantasies, their last record, and it was so brilliant. And what he would do is, if you picture a timeline, very strategically, he was dropping off different bits of content throughout the course of the campaign, you know? So he would have something pre-released. Hey, here's an acoustic version of what's going to be our single. What do you guys think, you know? And the ability to judge response is great, too. That's really valuable, you know? So we could talk about data, but there's all sorts of data you can get if you're using these different widgets to give away media for an email. So Matt Druin, timeline, you know, say here's pre-release, here's the release of the record, you know, and here's post-release. He was doing bits of content all throughout, right? So it's raising awareness, you know, that's what it's doing. So I do think it helps. There's this quote, I think it's from Tim O'Reilly, where it says, "The curse of the developing artist is anonymity, not piracy," you know? So you think about that quote, and I do think it's very valuable to, you know, to make yourself known, to give out tracks, you know, but I don't think it's all about, hey, I'm going to give it all for free, you know? Like, I still, to this day, I can, you know, there are certain artists where they're like, hey, here's my music, right? But they don't know me, they don't get an email from me, so the relationship is over. I might go back, right? But I kind of forget about them. There's so much to be aware of these days. There's so much media, so much. So if that band could then connect with me later, it's like, hey, you got that track? You know what? Now we got the EP together, or now we got the full length, you know? So it's about getting that email and then communication, and kind of like, this is probably a super lame metaphor, but it's, to me, it's almost like, it's like dating, right? So there's the monetization part, is like end goal, you know? But there's a lot to be said about the relationship, about, you know, getting, you know, comfortable with your fans and letting your fans know. It's, you know, kind of the warming process, you know, to use like a marketing term, you know? So keeping in contact with folks and not automatically saying, buy this, you know?
Right.
There's you know, providing content, providing incentives, you know? And every company does this. This isn't just not a music thing. I mean, think about anybody. It's give away free samples or, you know, that sort of thing. It's not just for... Sometimes I feel that the innovation in the music industry comes from people outside of the music industry. Like Matt Druin, I think he was interested in real estate before he got into music. So there's a lot of ideas that are coming into the music industry from outside of the music industry that maybe have existed previously, but like music industry is just kind of getting comfortable with it, you know?
So a lot of people that do these things and drive a lot of fans to their websites, and they have these relationships that they're fostering, you know, they don't get signed or picked up, and they feel stagnant's not really the right word, but they want more. What's the next move? Touring or hiring somebody for PR?
So that's interesting. So it's kind of like how you measure success, right? There are people that think that a label deal is a stamp of approval. I've made it, you know? But I think it's more nuanced than that, you know? So it kind of depends on, let me outline a success story. So you know a former co-worker of yours, Amy Hydeman, who's part of this band, Carmen.
Right.
So I like what they did, and the end result is they did get signed, right? They got signed to Sony. They're the flagship artist for Epic right now. That's where they are right now. They're on Saturday Night Live 2 weeks ago, you know. So this is where they are now. How they get started and how they measured their success was, and a really smart manager who said, all right, you guys want to be international pop superstars. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at Billboard every week, and we're going to look at the songs that are popular in Billboard, trending songs, and you guys are going to do 2 covers a week, right? So, and I talked to Amy about this, and it's just fascinating, and it worked. So they built up slowly. So they would cover a Janelle Monáe song. Janelle Monáe would see that on Twitter, retweet it, and then slowly, you know, it looks like Carmen just like popped, they're here. But if you look at the whole thing, right, it's a slow build, you know? So I think it's different for everybody. I think Carmen did a really good job by identifying that we're going to totally focus on YouTube. And they like owned the internet for a period of time.
Yeah.
Like they were it.
They've got friends everywhere because of that. They kind of picked them up along the way.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of an abstract thing, but you know, they were judging their success by the increase in YouTube views. And then finally, oh man, I forget the name of the site right now. It was a hip hop site. All hip.
Was it WorldStar?
WorldStar Hip Hop. Yeah, they picked it up, right?
Yep.
They picked up the Chris Brown cover, and that kind of got this massive thing happening. But if you look before that, they were measuring their success by, okay, we're getting more views, and then, you know? And a lot of people just see this part, but there was this build-up here, you know? So the other thing you mentioned was touring, which I think is really, really, really important. I teach primarily online music marketing courses, and I talk about physical stuff too, but for me, there's no better way to engage fans than a live show. There's not, you know, like if I'm at South by Southwest and I might have heard of some band and maybe I listen to them on Spotify or something like that and they're like, okay, but if I see them live and I'm blown away, you know, that's a whole different thing. So I think you are at a disadvantage if you don't play out live. I know it's not possible for everybody, but I think you need that skill, you know. So yeah, you know, honing your craft. This is something we didn't talk about before. Any marketing should be done is you got to have great music, of course. And I think you got to have your live show together, you know. I'm going to go off on a tangent. So John Mayer came to Berklee, and he comes here periodically, does different clinics. And I'm going to talk about social media for a second. So when he was here last, you know, he has a history with social media. He had a lot of Twitter followers, you know, like that sort of thing. He kind of killed it all. And he said to Berklee students, songwriting folks, he's like, hey, listen, now is not the time to be thinking, is this a good tweet? Is this a good Facebook post? Now is the time to be thinking, is this a good chorus? Is this a good song? So I really agree with that. You know, you got to hit the woodshed. You got to be great. You got to be great at what you do. Carmen is great. Amy's voice is great. You know, like they've got some magic there, and they honed it at Berklee. You know, they were here 4 years, and you know they honed it. But you have to be fantastic. So John Mayer says, "Here's your social media plan. Create music that doesn't suck. You can have visibility in a minute if your music is great." You know, and there's something to that, right? But there is something too. There's all these little things you can do with social media to improve results. You know, so
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, we've been going really fast here, so I see some questions coming in already. If you're cool answering some questions.
Yeah, I'd love to answer questions. Yeah.
All right, great. We've got one from Mark, who just has his own website up and running, and he wants to know what would you recommend he uses as a storefront to sell his merch.
Okay, so there's a lot of different options out there, and it depends on a couple of different things, right? So some people are comfortable with having everything under one roof, you know. So there's companies like Nimbit comes to mind, where Nimbit does distribution. You know, they will get your music to iTunes and Amazon, that sort of thing. They have a social media component, and they also have a component where you can sell off of your own site. You know, so if you're comfortable, hey, I just want one dashboard to do everything, a company like Nimbit could be your option. Reverb Nation does something similar too, but there's some restrictions in terms of what they do. But those two are options if you want something under one roof, you know. I teach a course called Online Music Marketing with Topspin. I really love Topspin as a marketing and e-commerce partner. They're very powerful tools. The guys that are running it are super sharp. They're leaders in the direct-to-fan world. So they're making great tools, very powerful tools that I think are excellent for musicians to use, both on the marketing side and the sales side, because it kind of all fits together, you know. So they make widgets that you can use to get an email, for example. But then they have a whole dashboard where once you get that email floats into a dashboard, pulls some additional information about that person, and you can organize that person and message that person right from one dashboard. What they don't do is third-party distribution, but there are other great partners that can do that, you know. So I without knowing more about Mark, it's hard to say. But the top options that I think are out there, I think Bandcamp is very good. Bandcamp is a hosted solution, but you can kind of integrate it into your site so it looks like you're on one site. You know, Bandcamp is very good. Topspin I think is excellent. Nimbit, Reverb Nation. There's some others that are out there. Moontoast is another one. And it kind of, I would suggest people do their research. Not all of these companies have the same amount of developers, as an example. So some things work better than others, you know? So this is kind of a wonky way to say, do your research, but those, I think I listed 5, are, in my mind, kind of the top tier guys. I'm, you know, because I teach Topspin, I know a lot about Topspin, and I'm very, very interested in what those guys are doing, you know? They seem to be kind of at the forefront. Bandcamp is also awesome, you know, but they're kind of different different services.
Right.
So it's a large answer, and I'd have to know more about Mark and like, all right, what are you trying to do? You know.
Right.
So that's kind of my non-answer to that question.
Well, that's good. It gives people,
Yeah.
a lot of people, a starting point.
Okay.
Andrew has a question kind of about what we were talking about. Are the days of physical press kits over?
No, they're not, sadly. It's weird. So there's a couple, let me say it like this. For live venues, primarily, they want a link. They want a link where they can see everything. Sonic Bids is a company that can host your EPK, your electronic press kit. So if you are, I wouldn't send something physical to a club, you know. I would send them a link, hey, and you know, other things, but they would not get a physical package. Press right now still does largely, and I'm talking about physical press. Online press is, you know, online blogs is a whole different deal, how you approach those guys. We can talk about that, but like physical press, like you're trying to get, we're in Boston, you know, you want to get visibility with the Dig or the Phoenix or whatever. It still does, the Globe, work to send out something physical, you know? If you're doing it, if you're trying to get visibility in American Songwriter, as an example, which is a great magazine, you know, it helps to send them something physical, you know? But I mean, there's a lot of things that happen with press, but I would still make a physical press kit. You don't make photos anymore. It's a link to where someone can download, you know, high-res photos. But yeah, it's weird. It still is. It is still physical. They want CDs. Same with the radio, you know?
Mateo has a question. How do I branch my band out to outside markets?
How do I branch my band out to outside markets? So you are, okay, well, I think I got this. So here is my thought with that, and we can iterate on this idea. Luckily, on the East Coast, we have all of these towns, right? So we're in Boston. We have Providence to the south. We have Portland to the north. Worcester to the west, like that sort of thing. So I like the idea where it's possible of doing concentric circles, right? So, all right, nail your live show, and I'm just using Boston as an example. Play around Boston, and then kind of spread. You can spread down to New York City, you know? Maybe it's doing a show trade with another band that's really popular in New York, right? So open for that band in New York, and do the same thing back in Boston. Like, all right, guys, you want to have something happen in Boston? We can draw here,
right?
You know, and we'll email our list about your band, you know, do this reciprocal kind of thing.
Just keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way, you know. You know, there's a lot of people try to get these opening slots for bands that are touring nationally. I think there's mixed results with that sort of thing. I don't know how many people go early to see the openers, you know. But I love the idea. And even, you know, so think about like how Fish got started. It's this really famous story. So they're out of Burlington, Vermont.
Right.
They were trying really hard to break into Boston. This was in the 80s, you know, and they ended up totally renting out the Paradise. They paid for it, they rented it, and they bussed people from Burlington there to make this, hey, you know what, the Paradise was packed, it was sold out, and they made that happen. The manager at the time, John Paluska, super smart. I talked to him about that at one point. So it's just another example of kind of, you know, starting out and going like this, you know, and then hopefully building momentum and spreading out. It's more difficult. I don't know where Mateo is from, but I have students in Australia, and it's a little trickier in Australia, to be honest. Like, you have Western Australia, Eastern Australia, and there's like this whole thing in the middle that's kind of like, I've never been there, but it's like maybe desert or something
Alice
like that.
Springs and all that.
Yeah, so that's a little harder. We have it really good in the East Coast, you know.
Yeah.
I have students right now that are in Wyoming, and they're kind of branching out around Wyoming, but it's the same general idea. You know, sort of. I don't like the idea of an artist in Chicago, hey, I'm going to really focus on Tallahassee, Florida. It's not quite right. You know, it's like, all right, hit Chicago. What else is near there? You know, maybe it's some colleges in Des Moines, Iowa, or whatever. You know, it's kind of. I think that's the best practice. It's a large answer. I have seen bands. On my blog, I talk about this band called Fanfarlo, who did some interesting things to get a show in New York. They're very popular in the UK. They're in like NME and stuff like that. And like, hey, we want to break in the US. How do we do it? And what they did was they had kind of an ace in the hole where they are friends with the guys in Sigaros, who emailed their whole list and said, we love Fanfarlo. They're going to be playing, I forget what the club was at the time, like Brownies or something in New York. And they ended up that was a big part of what they did. But they also did traditional PR too. They hired a publicist company called Sneak Attack, to hit blogs in New York, to hit all the outlets, So traditional stuff still does work, blogs and
Right.
print press, So they had this Sigaros telling people their whole list, about, they have a lot of people in New York that like him. You got to check out Fanfarlo. They had a PR person that was working all around New York. And they ended up playing, I think, the Bowery or something like that.
Wow.
So there's a different approach. But again, it's really hard to talk about particulars sometimes without knowing more about Mateo's situation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's like kind of off the top of my head, like how.
Yeah. Mike wants to know, should he use iTunes, CD Baby, Spotify, etc.? What's kind of the go-to?
Yeah. So this is an interesting conversation. Our viewers might want to Google what the guy, David, I'm spacing on his last name, Lowry, from Camper Van Beethoven and Cracker. He was at SF Music Tech a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how iTunes is not great, how they're not doing enough for artists. And he was, in my opinion, kind of, it wasn't apples to apples. He was comparing what iTunes is to what a label used to do. Now, iTunes is just a retailer. iTunes is a retailer. So I think it's, other people have done this. Pete Townsend wrote something a while back about that. Like, iTunes has to be more supportive of artists. It's not what they do. They are a retailer of music. So my opinion is, sell off of your own site. Drive traffic to your own site. Get a higher margin from sales off of your own site. But there's a group of people that want to buy on iTunes. eMusic did a survey, and they might be biased, but their survey that came out maybe last week, it's like people want to own things.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is. With me, I'm great with Spotify and RDO and that sort of thing. And if I really love a band, then I'll go to their site and like get something awesome. Like I do that, you know. I just got a 7-inch from this band called Pale Seas, which is just great. Like they blew me away, So back to retailers. I think it makes sense to be on all of the retailers, including Spotify. Yeah. And there's debate about Spotify. Spotify pays very poorly.
Right.
Well, let me clarify. Spotify has relationships with labels and distributors, and it's not the fact that Spotify pays very poorly. It's the deal that they worked out with the labels ends up paying the artist very poorly.
Fractions of pennies.
Yeah, but if you are going direct with iTunes, you can't really go direct. You have to use an independent distributor like TuneCore CD Baby. If you're using, let's just use CD Baby as an example. CD Baby takes 9% cut. So if you were getting your music on iTunes using CD Baby, you're going to get about 61 cents for each sale of a 99-cent song. Right. That's like kind of how the math works.
Yeah.
So overall, it's sell off of your own site when you can. Have your music out on these other services because Spotify. That's my go-to place right now.
Right.
When you mention a band, Sharon Van Etten pops into mind. Somebody mentioned her the other day. Or The Clean. Somebody just told me about The Clean. So I go to Spotify. I'm like, these guys are awesome. Mm-hmm. And then I want more. So that's right now. I view Spotify almost as like radio, or like what I mean. Yeah. I don't think it's great for monetization yet. Mm-hmm. Maybe it will down the line as it grows, and it's growing considerably. But definitely use a third-party independent distributor like CD Baby, like Amazon. There's others that are in the UK, Ditto Music. They're all kind of low cost. TuneCore is pretty great because you don't pay a fee. You just pay you pay an annual fee, but it's not a fee on every sale. CD Baby is a fee on every sale, but I like them both.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons to each. But yeah, I definitely think that you should get on third-party retail with the idea that whatever marketing you're doing, try to drive people to your site. That's why I think having your site together is like one of the first things you should do after you have your live show together and you've been woodshedding and you've got great music. You know what I mean? It's like those things, and then get your site together, then focus on social and everything else too. But I'm really, what's the term, bullish about getting your site together. And there's easy ways to do it. Like, I'll talk about this very quickly.
Sure.
So in my mind, there's like 3 really, really easy ways to get online visibility. The easiest way by far, it takes 2 minutes to set up. There's this company called OneSheet. Set up by the guy that started Artist Data. His name is Brendan Mulligan. Really, really smart guy. I know him well. I've had him as a guest speaker in my courses. Mm-hmm. OneSheet simply collects all of your social media. YouTube, it's like 3 dozen different things it can collect, and then kind of positions it on a page. You provide a background image, and it's literally 2 minutes. You go in there, you sign up, what services are using it. OneSheet pulls them in very nicely, right? and you're done. And by the time I just said the sentence, you're done. You know.
Yep.
So that's very easy for web visibility, and I think it's not super robust, but it's something you do immediately. Then another like easy way to get things happening is Bandzoogle and Verb. These are hosted services that have templates. Again, you pop in there, you decide what template you want, you decide which different tabs you want, how you want to, how you want your music out there, that sort of thing. And again, it's like maybe an hour tops to get a site together using Bandzoogle and Verb, right? So one sheet, Bandzoogle and Verb, and then like a third option, which is a little trickier, but still requires very little, hardly any coding, is using WordPress.org and a theme. And then, with WordPress.org, you need to register a domain, you need to get a hosting provider. But like there's, Bluehost and WordPress.org together are great. They have something called a one-click install. So you can have like a highly functioning site. I'm going to say some marketing stuff right now, which is I have a website called musicmarketingbook.com. And that's set up in WordPress.org and a theme. Mm-hmm. And I set it up on a Saturday. It took me maybe 5 hours. I'm pulling in blog posts and that sort of thing. But it's very, very easy ways to get web visibility. There's kind of like very little excuse not to have your own site together, in my opinion. There's just all of these tools out there, and there's more. One Sheet is new. I mean, that thing didn't exist 6 months ago, And
you don't have to be like an HTML code expert or anything anymore.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah, it's really simple. Yeah.
Well, we've definitely raced through. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Yeah.
All right, we'll do a couple more. Daniel wants to know how we should approach submitting his music to physical radio stations and internet radio sites.
So that's different, So Pandora is the biggest internet radio there is, right? The way you submit to Pandora, and Pandora can nix you. They don't take everything. Mm-hmm. We have a course author here named Jonathan Feiss who has a new course called Project Management. Jonathan got his music on Pandora, and the way you do it is you have to have a physical copy of the CD for sale with Amazon.
Okay.
And then there's instructions on Pandora on how to do it. Once you've got a physical CD and it costs a certain amount of money to do that, I forget how much, then you submit to Pandora. They check that you've got a physical CD, and then they review it and they say yes or no. Okay. There's a friend of mine who got nixed by Pandora, and I'm shocked. He has this band called Orchestratica, which is like the best thing I've heard. And they got nixed, so who knows why. Huh. But it's kind of funny, It's not a guarantee you can get in Pandora. So that's like online, right? And physical is tricky. So radio is broken out into commercial radio, non-commercial radio. Commercial radio for a developing artist, don't even think about it. Like we have like Kiss something rather in Boston. Like the right-hand side of the dial, I forget where the cutoff is, 92 point something. Mm-hmm. Anything below 92 point something is non-commercial radio, right? They take submissions, so college radio takes submissions.
Right.
The way you submit is still physical CD. It is. It's still physical CD. And it's, there's a really great station, WMBR, that's MIT's station. And they have an awesome show over there, Breakfast of Champions, very early, in the morning. I think it starts at 8:30, 8 to 9 or something like that. The woman that runs it is Zoe Rogers, and you can find her contact info on the site, on WMBR. So that's how you do it. I think it's picking and choosing,
Yeah.
So what college radio is pretty much like focused on like indie music and like maybe some, and you got to do your research,
Right.
What are the college stations in the market? What are they playing? A lot of these stations show exactly what they're playing. It's a physical CD, and then there's follow-up. You can email the person, say, hey, I sent this to you, or that sort of thing, So that's the physical side. I would focus on non-commercial. NPR is radio too, but the way that NPR is done, it's more like a press pitch than it is a radio pitch. NPR, they have like stringers, these other writers. NPR is a little bit tricky, but NPR can have amazing, if your music fits, amazing results. NPR sells records. Pitchfork sells records, So it's kind of like I would break it up with that. Commercial radio, non-commercial radio, NPR. If your music makes sense for college radio, determine who you want to hit, find the contact info. That's in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a question that kind of kind of put you on the spot, and I'm not sure which class he's referring to,
Oh.
but Wade wants to know, what can I expect if I take your class?
So we've been talking for 37 minutes. It's this times 24, you know? So there's 12 lessons in a class,
Yeah.
right? So there's an hour-long chat in every class. So whatever question you have, you know, I'm there to answer the question. But, I mean, I won't speak to, I mean, I could speak a little bit to how the class is structured. So I teach 5 different courses. I wrote 3. I'm going into these courses all the time and updating them. That's the thing with online music marketing, you know? You really have to be on top of what's happening right now. So I somewhat consider myself, or like what I strive to be, is a little bit of a curator. So like you're curious about this service versus this service, or the best practices. Like I have experience doing this. I've been teaching since 2007. I have the label background, you know. So it's very rare when I can't, in my mind, add value to what a student is doing. So I've had students that are super high-end, right? Alessandro Cortini took online music marketing with Topspin. He was a touring synth player with 9 Inch Nails, you know, and then absolute developing artists. And I think I'm pretty good with suggestions and working with individual students on whatever they want to do. Not everybody's the same, so you're not going to get like the same thing for everybody. I try to give very robust feedback.
Right.
My chats, I try to add information like to the minute, you know, that's happening right now that might be of value to people that are interested in online music marketing or whatever else I teach.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of it. I mean, the courses have tons of video. The courses have flash animations. We talk about like everything from getting your website set up to data analysis, financial planning, third-party distribution. I mean, I think it's pretty. I try to cover all bases. You know, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And the classes that Mike does are the Topspin class, the online music marketing class, the music marketing, press promotion, distribution, retail.
And I teach Dave Cusack's course.
And Dave Cusack's Future of Music course, which is great.
Yeah.
And I mean, those are just the ones that he teaches, but there are, I think, between 130 and 150 other courses, you know, from music business, songwriting, production, all kinds of things that we offer here. So we're going to wrap it up right here. But if you guys have any questions about how the classes work any further, like I said before, I'm an advisor. There's a team of advisors that are here, and you guys can give us a call to ask any questions about Mike's courses or about the songwriting aspect or the production aspect. It's all kind of intertwined now. You're never just an artist or just a manager. You wear a lot of hats. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Mike, for being here.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome.